Today's webinar is titled Sustainable Home Remodel, How to Achieve a Beautiful Health Design That Meets Your Budget. And our presenter today is Mary Golden, Assistant Professor and Program Chair for Interior Design. Mary has more than a dozen years of experience across multiple bioregions, merging innovative architectural and interior solutions with sustainable business practices. Holding a master's degree in architecture from the University at Buffalo, she established the first company in Western New York to specialize in natural building technologies and clay-finished plasters. The company evolved to include sustainable interior and hybrid projects integrating mainstream materials and ecological systems. At the heart of her work is a personal philosophy intent on being a whole systems thinker who creates, practices, and teaches about a built environment that is not only significant, but fully responsive to global challenges. Current research interests explore public interest design and processes for creating sustainable businesses through the assessment of innovative green materials. Mary contributed to the introduction of the book Eco-Kids, Raising Children Who Care for the Earth, and her professional work is featured in the book Space Matters. Mary is a longstanding member of ASID, the National Association of Professional Women, and the United States Green Building Council. As a designer, corporate professional, and assistant professor, her work thus far has been grounded in construction technology, methodology, and practical applications inherent in professional practice. Welcome, Mary, and thank you for presenting today.
Thank you, Ron, and hello to everyone. It's certainly my pleasure to talk with all of you today about sustainable home remodeling and working with an interior designer. This is a subject, as Ron mentioned, that I teach about here at RIT in our BFA Interior Design program, and it's been at the heart of my professional work for more than 14 years now. So I know for a majority of my clients, when we get together for initial meetings, most are often not sure how to begin the remodeling process. And for many, sustainability is an idea that is important to them, but exactly how to go about incorporating sustainable practices and green products into a remodel is typically pretty unclear. There can be a lot of confusion about what sustainability and green remodeling actually mean, and working with an experienced interior designer will help guide you through the remodeling process so that you can achieve a beautiful, healthy design that definitely meets your budget. Remodeling is a big investment, and so for many of us, it's an opportunity to significantly change our day-to-day experience and the aesthetic of our homes. It can be exciting and intimidating at the same time. So with that in mind, today I'm going to talk about a few key areas to help everyone with us today prepare for a remodel and make the process more understandable. So let's start with the three key areas that we will focus on in today's presentation. We'll talk about how to include sustainability and green materials in your design, and I'll share some resources with you for continued exploration. Next, we'll look at the financial aspects of renovation and step you through how to create a budget for remodeling. And we'll round out the discussion on where to find out a professional interior designer and how to best work together to achieve your design goals. But before we get into the details of remodeling, let's clarify the difference between sustainability and green building and look at why we would consider their importance in home design. So let's start by defining sustainability. The classic definition of sustainability is simply the ability for a system or a series of actions to continue indefinitely without being destroyed. So sustainability is therefore a really broad concept, and it's a way of thinking about the impact of the decisions we make for living on the planet. It's really about thinking about where your food, your clothes, your energy, and the other products that we use or purchase come from, and how that is affecting the systems of the planet as well as our own personal well-being. If we apply sustainability as a holistic approach to the built environment where, like physicians, we commit to doing no harm, then sustainable development involves meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The main objectives of sustainable development are to reduce or completely avoid the depletion of critical resources like energy, water, and raw materials, or prevent the environmental degradation caused by facilities and infrastructure throughout their life cycle. Ideally, we're looking to create the built environments that are livable, comfortable, safe, and productive. Building construction and operations can have extensive direct and indirect impacts on the environment, society, and economy. And this is probably familiar to a lot of you. It's commonly referred to as the 3 Ps, planet, prosperity, and people. Sustainability for the built environment is based on an independent, balanced system between these 3 tenets. So let's start with the protection of the planet. What this means is that the conservation and restoration of natural resources is our primary goal while enhancing and protecting biodiversity and ecosystems. Buildings use resources like energy, water, raw materials. They generate waste through occupant use, construction, and even the demolition of the building at the end of its life cycle. And during its occupation, the building itself can emit potentially harmful atmospheric emissions, so we're looking to reduce those. Also really important is prosperity. Taking a look at the economy and the life cycle economic performance of our homes as well as our buildings and create demand for diverse, affordable green products and services so that we can create an equitable building model that produces energy, improves the bottom line, and for businesses, improves profits. For people, we look at ourselves as active participants in the planetary cycle, and the aim for us is to improve the overall quality of life for all people, current and future generations, by enhancing occupancy, health, and comfort. Ideally, all home and building decisions should represent a net positive benefit in all 3 of these areas. So for architecture, this means designs for buildings and communities that create lower environmental impacts while enhancing health, productivity, a sense of community, and the quality of life. So if we take the practices of sustainability and apply it to architecture and building, what we come up with is what's known as green building. And green building is the practice of increasing the efficiency with which buildings use resources over the complete building and life cycle. At its core, green building is a sustainable systems approach, meaning that the building is considered as a whole, not the sum of individual or unrelated parts. So when we think about green remodeling, it's more than adding new things to an older house. It considers how those changes will affect the existing infrastructure, systems, and performance, while identifying weaknesses so that the homeowner can take steps to improve them. Designing major renovations and retrofits for existing buildings to include sustainable design attributes reduces operation costs and environmental impacts and can increase what's known as building resiliency. To remodel our homes with building resiliency in mind, we start by exploring energy consumption and efficiency. So with concerns for energy independence increasing and the impacts of global climate change more evident, it is essential to find ways to reduce energy loads, increase efficiency, and maximize the use of renewable resources. Improving our home's energy performance reduces our overall consumption and in turn can reduce our monthly bills. You don't have to do it all here to see energy savings and improve the efficiency of your home. Simply adding one system that is more efficient than an existing one can have a big effect. For example, selecting a new high-efficiency furnace or investing in a geothermal system will make heating in your home much more effective. While both of these systems have high upfront expenditures, the value over time gives a return on your investment, and you'll also see the savings in your monthly energy bills. For a more moderately priced energy system, investments suitable for remodels include retrofitting existing floors to include radiant floor heating or smart controls to manage the systems of your home. Being sure your home's windows and doors and insulation are sound, create a tight thermal barrier, and makes for any of the systems we just talked about work more efficiently, again, saving you money. If budget and site conditions permit, you can significantly alter your energy resources away from the national grid by supplementing with solar panels and wind turbines. But unless you live in an area like Colorado or the Southwest where sunshine's abundant, you will not be able to dedicate 100% of your home's energy resourcing to just solar panels. So for example, you'll have to complement your solar with another generator like wind turbines. Similar to furnaces and geothermal, these are higher expenditure retrofits but they do have tax benefits. The easiest investment for reducing energy needs and lowering bills is selecting energy-efficient appliances. All major manufacturers have energy labels, so it's relatively easy to compare and contrast appliances and their packages, not only for functionality but for efficiency. Look for the Energy Star label to be sure your appliance meets the guidelines, and that's going to position you to apply for rebates or tax credits. If we apply the same thinking to water savings, a sustainable home should use water more efficiently and reuse or recycle water for on-site use when that's feasible. For efficiency, this can be done quite easily by selecting water-conscious appliances like washers and dishwashers and low-flow fixtures for bathrooms and kitchens. Huge advances have been made in very recent years in the technology of how these household fixtures and equipment have been designed, and the issues of low water pressure have been eliminated in most brands. Again, look for the Energy Star label for your appliances and test out water-conscious fixtures at plumbing showrooms to be sure you like the performance. Your interior designer will have had training from manufacturer representatives on a wide range of products and will be in a position to help you evaluate which fixtures will offer you the function, the style, and efficiency you desire. For reuse or recycling water on site, use rainwater collection systems to store water for your gardens. These systems are really quite cost effective. Most of the time they're less than $1,000 to purchase and install, and they can save you money in the long term. In some cases, folks have felt that the storage units are rather unsightly, but more attractive units have recently come on the market, and they can be decoratively installed around your gutter systems or even buried underground. So for example, like the Sista water collection that we're showing here on the slide. If we continue to talk about water and move outside of the home, managing the water from your roof and being sure water is directed away from the exterior of your home is vital to your home's health and long-term structural stability. Any exterior renovations to your property should aim to reduce, control, and/or treat stormwater runoff. This is the kind of water that's hitting your roof, the exterior walls of your building, or any hardscape surfaces like your patios and your driveways. That's all considered storm water. And if possible, what you want to try to do in your green spaces is to support native plantings in the landscape. Your interior designer will have referrals for good landscape designers and landscape installation companies who specialize in sustainable and even organic landscape practices. So let's take a step back inside the building and let's talk a little bit about indoor air quality of a home. The indoor air quality, otherwise known as IAQ, has a significant impact on occupant health, comfort, and productivity. Among other attributes, a sustainable home will maximize daylighting, have appropriate ventilation, and moisture control. In addition, it will optimize acoustic performance and avoid the use of materials with high volatile organic compounds, or VOC emissions. VOCs are gassing off of chemicals from the manufacturing process and can sometimes take up to 6 months to almost a year to completely release. A good example of this is new car smell. Everyone gets very excited about the way their new car smells. The unfortunate truth to that is a gas off of chemicals from the manufacturing process of our vehicles. So if we think about all of the different products that we're placing within our home during a remodel, and we close up that building with doors and windows, that's a lot of potential chemical release that's happening in the household. The most important thing for you and your designer to do together is to read the labels. Sustainable manufacturers will publish reports on their products and offer details and statistics on safety of their products. It's kind of like reading the labels of the food in your grocery store before you purchase. Besides VOCs, your interior designer will help you select materials that will be durable, maintenance appropriate for your home, and minimize life cycle impacts, such as global warming, resource depletion, and human toxicity. A sustainable home is designed and operated to use and reuse materials in the most productive way across its entire life cycle, and is adaptable for reuse during the end of its life cycle. Green materials range in price just like any traditional building material, and it's important here to qualify your investment by looking at the quality of the attributes, their function, and budget. Something that's on trend right now in the green building world and green building market is what's known as LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. This is a series of prescriptive approaches to employ sustainable practices and methods over the whole process of designing and building. Now, currently, Green LEED AP for homes is directed towards new construction. Within that, there are several credit-bearing categories that add up to a possible 110 points, which ultimately can lead to certification once it is approved. The benefits of certification for new constructions are in performance and in resale values. And I'm bringing this up because certification is important to a lot of us that are professionals in the field. So many interior designers will have become what's known as LEED Green Associates. That is the first step in the certification process, and some will also have LEED Green AP Homes specialties. Now, you don't have to go through the certification process to take a look at the goals and the points that are involved in LEED. And you can certainly apply a lot of these credentials into your personal process, and a certified LEED associate can help you do that. So let's take a look at some of the benefits to green remodeling, and why would you go about doing this? The first would really be health reasons. A green remodel can be good for you physically and emotionally. Health-focused designs maximize fresh air and natural light while improving functionality with universal design. And universal design is known as designing for lifespan that considers the performance of systems from childhood through later life and the needs of all populations. The U.S. EPA includes poor indoor air quality on the top list of the 5 most urgent public health risks. Levels of air pollution inside the home can be 2 to 5 times greater than that of outdoor levels. And that's typically going to be due to high VOCs in the home and poorly functioning air systems, such as your humidifier, your dehumidifier, and your furnace. So using low toxic materials, adding good ventilation, such as an air-to-air exchanger, can help prevent problems like mold, allergens, and poor air quality. We, of course, want our remodel to be beautiful and comfortable, so inviting and attractive rooms reinforce the comfort of a home through natural materials resourced from renewable resources, high energy efficient lighting like LED technology, and quality design details make for pleasing spaces that have longevity. Next, the ecological benefits. Remodeling is an opportunity to create a home that enhances the environment instead of depleting it. With your green remodel project, you can be more resource efficient by minimizing waste and recycling what's left over to reduce the amount of materials that will end up in a landfill. By choosing environmentally responsible products, you can protect forests, wildlife, air, and water quality. Let's think about this. For every gallon of water or kilowatt hour of electricity you save, you reduce the amount of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases that are entering the atmosphere. If every remodel incorporates sustainable thinking and green design, we can make a significant impact to reducing our overall carbon footprint on the planet. Important to all of us is cost savings. Energy efficient, water-wise designs and products will reduce monthly utility bills. For example, installing a high-efficiency washing machine can save up to $90 on energy bills per month and $6,000 in gallons of water every year. The most efficient new Energy Star appliances typically use 50% less energy than other models. This all adds up to added value. If we take a look at our aesthetic and how we're designing and our selections, if we make classic or timeless design choices, this helps keep our interiors current and avoids having them look dated. This helps us keep their value. Homes designed to welcome various ages and abilities are marketable to a larger population, which becomes a key benefit for resale. And according to a 2015 House Healthy Homes Trend Study, green elements were represented as having a high value, with 80% of home buyers indicating that their new homes did not meet their environmental expectation. And 96% of those folks said that they were willing to pay more for a home with green features. So let's look at what's impacting the real estate market and the remodeling industry. The current trend for sustainable practices in remodeling is largely due to a raised consciousness around green building and the resulting benefits. And because of this, we're seeing an unprecedented level of government initiative, improvements in sustainable material quality, access, and affordability, and a heightened residential demand for green construction. The April 16, 2015 Renovation Motivations Point to Going Green article in Architect Magazine reported on the same Housed Healthy Home study, which that polled more than 170,000 people in the United States and more than 250,000 people globally. Ultimately, what this study produced was that there are some big generational trends that are influencing the rise in green remodels, and there's really two demographic populations that are currently impacting the remodeling market. Sustainably minded millennials are making up the newest and largest demographic of current home buyers, and this coming of age generation is purchasing existing homes and renovating them for sale. Second, there are 2.5 million baby boomers in or approaching retirement who are invested in staying in their homes and aging in place. 41% of these boomers determined that their homes were not healthy, either in the finishes or the energy systems, and those folks are investing in significant changes to create universally designed, comfortable interior environments with green products and sustainable systems. So this graph here is really interesting in regards to the topics that we're covering today. This is a graph from that house study, and if we take a look at the top concerns for renovations, the issues that were on most people's minds were finding the right service providers, finding the right products and materials, their budget and financing. So you're not alone in making these concerns your top priority. So with that in mind, let's look at some strategies for reducing these challenges. Redesigning your home is a very personal process, as you're inviting professionals into your life and your home to create significant changes. Before you begin working with an interior designer, here's a few tips to help you prepare. First, it's important to define who the stakeholders are in the project. And what I mean by this is identifying who is involved in the remodel and the decision-making for the project. This includes the aesthetic, the functional, and the budgetary decisions. Next, identify who will the design impact. Is it just yourself and a partner? Perhaps you have a new baby on the way, or you're empty nesters. Perhaps it's children or elderly parents. Even pets come into consideration. Many times I've designed around pets, just like this little guy here. I've designed new dog rooms that have included showers and baths, and that's been on the rise. It's kind of a fun direction that remodeling is taking to even include our pets. So we want to think about the functional needs for everybody in the home. And what's our day-to-day patterns? How are we starting out our day? Who's staying at home? Who's going to work in the morning? Where does everybody gather in the evenings to socialize, to hang out, to cook, and relax? All of those aspects become elements that we can help to prioritize how the remodel is going to go. So for a smooth running project, have an understanding about how those decisions are going to be made and who is going to come into agreement on those aspects. And this is a big, big piece. Challenges and differences of opinion. How are you going to address those and be willing to compromise about aspects of the design that may be wants as opposed to needs? So let's take a look at how we can go about doing that. The first is to create checklists. This will help you set some clear goals, and this can be a little tricky at the start, and it's okay if you don't have the project fully defined or you aren't sure about what to do. That's what hiring the professional interior designer is for. Most people have an idea of what it is that they want to do in their home, and they aren't just really sure about the whole scope. So making a list of things that you love about your house would be ideal, and that way you know these are things that you want to keep or work around. And then also making a list of things that maybe aren't necessarily working really well for you, or you definitely want to remodel, perhaps something that's really dated. Those will help you at your initial meeting with your interior designer, so you want to bring those with you. The next thing to do is to identify your taste. What's aesthetically pleasing to you and to the folks who are stakeholders in the project? You want to achieve this relative to your budget and think about this in the investment for the short or long term. Are you somebody who remodels every 5 years, or is this an investment that you're looking at to have stay in place perhaps for 10, maybe even 15 years? You can do this by gathering inspiration pictures to discuss with your designer. For those of us that are old school, pulling images out of a magazine and creating a folder is a great way to go. Many people are using Pinterest or House to flag and tag and pin different things that they find exciting. One thing I recommend to most of my clients, and I'm seeing this more and more, is the use of a tablet, because if you store your images and your information about products that you're interested in that tablet, you can actually take that with you on your trips with your designer to different showrooms, and it becomes a really great working tool throughout the process. So at this really early stage, while you're making lists and setting goals, remember it's okay to think big at this point, as the interior designer will help you refine your aesthetic and identify a focused direction that considers your budget. So let's think about the size of the remodel, and if it's large, are you interested in doing a remodel in phases? So one of the things that happens in the initial stages is everybody thinks that they need to add on, that they just don't have enough room in the house. A lot of times when I get involved with my clients, we find that by simply reprogramming the spaces that they already have, we can oftentimes avoid doing a remodel. But that may include some structural changes. So these are some things that we want to identify. If we do include a remodel that has structural changes, or we add onto the structure, you will need to consider the services of a licensed architect or engineer to stamp those structural changes and requirements. That will all have to be submitted in through your local building code as well. But before considering an addition, let's consider how much space you really need. The other thing that we need to think about with additions is that when you add square footage, you also have to factor in the extra costs of heating, air conditioning, electricity, and dressing out the space through to your furnishings to service that area of the home. So do consider the possibilities of utilizing the space you have to its highest potential, as I mentioned earlier. So one strategy for this is, instead of thinking about quantity of space, thinking about the quality of the space. Perhaps there's some areas that aren't being utilized as well. And that's where making some of those lists about your daily activities in the early phases can help us to itemize out exactly what areas of the home we might be able to put multiple uses into, or perhaps reclaim and reprogram that space for a better use. After all, truly eco-friendly design means using fewer new materials and creating as little waste as possible. The next thing that you want to do is plan your timeline. When do you want to start, and when do you need to have the construction completed? It takes on average 6 months to plan and prepare for a remodel. So it's better to start much earlier in the process, because that will give you an opportunity to make changes, to really think thoroughly about the project, and to make good decisions about the remodel itself. The more time that you put in to the design and planning phase, the smoother your construction process will go. It always takes much more time than you anticipate for the construction and process to go. So try to avoid setting up your completion dates right before major events and holidays. We'll revisit the timeline and expectations a little bit later on in the presentation. So once your overall goals are better defined, you can have a discussion with your interior designer about sustainability expectations for the project. So remember, you don't have to do it all to be sustainable. If your goal is simply an energy-efficient house, you can focus on Energy Star-proof appliances, on-demand hot water heaters, high-efficiency insulation in windows, and perhaps, if budget allows, solar technology. If you want to take it a step further, you might consider incorporating finishes and materials that are healthy and renewable, like sustainably harvested woods, reclaimed materials, low-flow water fixtures, and greener finishes that have recycled content or natural properties. At a construction level, green building materials such as certified lumber, energy-efficient roof systems, and non-toxic sealants or formaldehyde-free natural insulations can be considered. The materials that come together to create our homes require energy and resources to produce and ship. So many of the projects that are on the market that imply sustainability or green qualities can be pretty overwhelming to try and sift through, and at times it can be misleading. So let's break down a few key considerations about resourcing materials and that it would be appropriate for our project. So let's start with location. We've heard the term think globally and act locally. Each state and region will have its own particular green building culture. Politics and partisanship can influence the rate at which some cities and states adopt green initiatives, which can impact the materials that interior designers will be able to directly access. A sustainable interior designer will have awareness of these initiatives as well as sustainable manufacturers. To get a flavor of what's happening locally, I suggest taking some green home tours in your area and converse with homeowners about their experiences, their design-build process, and the energy systems that they employed for the livability and sustainable material selection. NESI is an organization here in the Northeast. Building Energy is an organization that you'll see nationally, and annually these organizations will host these green building tours typically in the spring, and you can travel from home to home and check out all of the really interesting sustainability features, talk with folks about data, and this site in general is a really great resource for finding out what's happening in your region. Next, let's consider climate. For interior designers, the most important factor is ultimately how well materials and the design align to keep energy consumption down and decrease the ecological footprint of the structures. So not all materials and systems are going to be appropriate for all regions. So for example, building with bamboo is common in a tropical climate. Earthen and natural systems are going to be more common in desert climates. And materials like shakes or wood in coastal or temperate climates might be employed, and super insulated materials for cold climates. An interior designer with a focus on green design will be well trained in understanding climate and have familiarity with local climate appropriate resources and be able to help you compare and contrast products to suggest the best options. You may also want to attend a green building trade show, especially if you're somebody who wants to see everything that's out there. The Green Build International Conference and Expo is part of the U.S. Green Building Council, which supports the LEED initiative. This conference happening annually in various cities of the country showcases a very wide array of products and systems. They're on display with the manufacturers, and you can see and touch the products firsthand and get a lot more information all in one place. Now, the expo itself is typically free or a very small nominal fee to attend the expo. The conference, on the other hand, is a paid venue, so you can decide for yourself how deeply you want to engage in that. State and regional green conferences will hold smaller conferences on specific climate considerations as well as more localized companies. Next, let's investigate tax breaks and incentives. This is always a big topic, such as energy efficiency mortgages, which offer loans for sustainable upgrades, or tax breaks for homeowners. Designers and contractors creating a green home, and they can be for homeowners, designers, and contractors creating a green remodel. Most municipalities now require an inspection or energy audit in order to refund or rebate taxes. So it's very important to read and understand the stipulations both at your state and federal level to be eligible for the refund breaks. Your municipalities can also recommend energy auditing companies in a region and frequently offer reduced or no-cost inspections. The two links that I'm providing for you here will have a lot of information about your regional and federal guidelines, and will provide you with a huge amount of links and resources. So let's evaluate materials and products for expected lifespan. What we want to do is look at the cleanability, the durability, Where are these products resourced from, and how are we installing them in the home? Are we putting the application and function in for the appropriate material, or do we really need to consider alternative materials to satisfy all the functions and needs? The initial price only gives a peephole view of the true cost of a product or design over the lifetime of your home. So, for example, a low purchase price may mean a good deal, but it can also signify a lack of quality or durability over the lifespan of the product. A higher purchase price, on the other hand, can mean a better deal in the long run, and you can actually reduce the cost of living in your home by choosing more resource-efficient fixtures and durable materials. Because when we factor in the cost of multiple replacements for lower cost or less durable materials, we need to consider not only the expense of that product, but the expense of the deconstruction and the reconstruction. So it does add up to be sometimes significantly more than the lower initial product we were looking at. So value to value, look at the time frame that product is going to live in your home. So that brings us to a conversation about cradle to cradle. When we think about cradle to cradle concepts, what we're talking about here is the lifespan of the product from its initial harvest through its production, transportation, and ideally to its selling point and into your home. That should all be within a 100-mile radius if you're looking to be truly low impact. Now, that's oftentimes very difficult, but that 100-mile radius is considered to be the average for low impact materials. Many materials are imported and have a higher cost of carbon for the longer the travel distance and or might be non-renewable. So what we're looking at is from that initial harvest through to the installation in a home, and then even at the end of its life cycle, what happens with that particular product? Is it going into a landfill, or is it something that we can reclaim, reuse, recycle, remanufacture? So, and your interior designer will have more insight into these different products and help you evaluate the selections. So resources and efficiency, all of these things add into sustainable practices. You can evaluate different manufacturers. Most manufacturers will now boast online their sustainable practices, meaning are they using energy efficiently while they're producing your goods? How are they managing water? And what's happening in terms of their packaging and transportation? As I mentioned earlier, the 100-mile radius, what we're looking for here is an energy-efficient distribution. If we are going over longer-term distances, what's the kind of distribution that's happening there? Is that a more energy-efficient distribution, or are we using a lot of gasoline to bring products closer to home? When we add value into our design, we're looking at the use in place. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that when we're selecting products that they're going to be most functional for their use in the home. So thinking about flooring, for example, is a really good place to start. When we think about high traffic areas, we want to make sure that we're picking surfaces that are going to be very durable and resilient, as opposed to areas like bedrooms that might have more carpeting or softer surfaces and not get as much high traffic area. So while carpeting will not last as long as tile, let's say, that we have in a higher traffic area, its durability over its lifetime will still have a good value. Another interesting approach is to incorporate salvaged materials. Reclaimed materials have an attractive patina and can help create an old or weathered look in areas of new construction, which is very on trend in the design world right now. Home reclamation stores have popped up in most cities and offer a tremendous variety of products that have been selective reclaimed for use. You can use recycled or renewable materials. Take a look at the label. A manufacturer can claim that its product is recycled even if it only includes 5% of recycled materials. Ideally, recycled components can make up a bulk of the material, and you should really be looking at 50 to 75% of that to be recycled components. A good example is recycled glass that's made into countertops. Renewable materials, on the other hand, are made from sources that are fast-growing, like bamboo or cork. if we take a look at the two examples that I'm showing here, this was an interesting remodel project where the client in the picture on the left-hand side had reclaimed a salvaged material from a shipyard. The newel post there is actually the tie-off for boats, and so that was very interesting. And what you don't see in that image is that the handrail is lead pipe that goes up to the second story. The other interesting feature in that particular image is that she recycled her grocery bags, her brown grocery bags, and actually tore up the grocery bags into nominal sizes, and then using a non-toxic glue created an interesting wallpaper. And she then lined that with magazine clippings. So if you can see in that image there's a lot of reds and oranges and yellows. She went through, before throwing away her old magazines, and collected all of these, this color palette, and then created this really interesting border. Above that is chalkboard paint, and that allows for a refreshing every day, if you wish, to put a new quote and inspiration in the home. On the other side, on the right-hand side, this is a very interesting use of recycled materials. That door there was actually recycled from Eddie Van Halen's home. Her brother is a contractor out on the West Coast, and when Eddie Van Halen was remodeling his home, pulled out all of these doors out of his house, and they made their way to this home and reinstalled. So that's actually a pretty cool and funky use of a previously existing product. In terms of the plaster that you're seeing on the wall behind, that plaster is harvested by hand and hand processed and then hand applied, and that's a durable finish, being in the interior that will last for 20 years. The micaceous clay that's in that finish will actually create a luminous effect, and you can see that by the reflection that's happening off of that wall surface. So you can really get very, very creative with your recycled and renewable materials. Plus, it's a really fun Saturday afternoon to go out to the salvage stores and hunt around. Okay, so let's look at alternatives. When we're looking at alternatives for a product, we want to make sure that we're coming up with a lot of different options, and that way we can value engineer when products may or may not come into budget. So let's get into budget a little bit and look at our design fees. So when we start to create a budget, what you want to do is take a good look at the breakdowns of costs. So design services are going to be one set of fees. If you're going to do any audits or assessments, those would be your energy assessments. You would then have a construction budget. That construction budget is going to take care of your labor, your materials, and your build out. And you do want to request different contracts for each of these. And these types of design fees are something that you negotiate with each person. Design services, for example, are either billed on an hourly basis or on a per project basis. And so you want to get a full outline of what all those services are going to be so that you can make the right decisions for your home. A professional interior designer will also have references for you for all these different people. So if you have no idea how much you want to spend on your project, and this is very, very common, most people will come in and say, we want to do a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel, but they have no idea how much they want to spend or what it's going to cost. I suggest to my clients to work backwards, meaning we start at a number that would be the absolute upper limit that the customer would be comfortable paying for a remodel at that time. And then we work backwards to find what a comfortable spending range would be. Sometimes it's easier to work backwards because you can identify pretty quickly what you're not willing to spend as opposed to what you are willing to spend. This is an example here from homeadvisor.com, which I'm giving you the link for here. This is a super resource where you can plug in your zip code, and it will give you averages for your area. And then it will give you a comparable as well for national expenditures, so you can really see where you are. The second link here that I'm giving you is a cost versus value report. This is for remodeling expenditures and how remodeling expenditures are faring in your particular area as opposed to the national average. So again, these two resources in combination with taking a look at your own comfort level with your budget will help you set goals as to what you should be spending or could be spending. So as we consider remodeling, the areas that people are investing in their homes most, the top areas for return are typically kitchens are number one, master bathrooms, powder rooms, or bathrooms servicing other bedrooms. Living rooms follow that, and followed by luxury laundry rooms. And as I mentioned, those laundry rooms are typically including mud rooms and even pet wash areas. So how do we locate an interior designer? Interior designers are going to be rigorously trained through academic programs, apprenticeship, and examination. And most of these interior designers will have their listing with the Council for Interior Design Accreditation, also local chapters and national chapters. They will have sat for the NCIDQ examination and completed their certification. So you will oftentimes see references there as well as local organizations. So most states will require that their interior designers are NCIDQ certified, and so that's a way to differentiate from those that might be in a more decoration field. So always interview your interior designers to make sure that they have their certifications. And what we can do is provide a large range of services for you. What we would do would be to help you pull together from your initial thinking and come up with concepts for your space and design the full interior environment, including alterations and construction of non-structural elements. We'll design full cabinetry, bathrooms, kitchens, and finishes, including all of your paint selections and fabrics. We prepare architectural drawings and specifications, and we can help you source all of the products. This is another list of interior design sources where you can find different interior designers in your area. These are locations that will happen throughout the country. Some will be more active in other areas. And let's just step through the different layers of the design process. So the first process is your pre-design phase. Here's where we're going to include a whole series of meetings to get together and move through what would be the ideation or the idea generating process, explore different products, explore different concepts, and create schematic designs. The schematic designs will be typically sketches and color perspectives of the interior of your environment. The next phase would be the design phase, and this is where your interior designer will prepare scaled drawings for you, and that should then give you a very good flavor as to what that remodel will look like. You will also have perspective drawings at this point and a pretty definitive materials list, and that would then take you into the sign-off phase. Once you go through defining exactly what's going to be happening in the remodel, before moving on to creating construction drawings, you and your interior designer will sit down and sign off on that process. At that point, then construction drawings and bidding documents will then be prepared. And that's going to be a full set of annotated drawings that have all your dimensions and your notes and all the specifications for how all those materials are actually going to go into play and where they go. The final phase would then be the build-out phase, and that's the actual installation of the products on site. So with that, your interior designer can be hired through that build-out phase to help you manage the project with your contractor and answer valuable questions during that process. So the biggest thing is to clearly communicate with your interior designer going through the process, and just remember in the big picture that it's an adventure. and at the end you're going to have a great new space to live in.
Great. So now we have some questions for you from today's webinar participants. The first question is, we recently purchased a couple new energy-efficient kitchen appliances and noticed that the projected lifespan of the new appliances is only 3 to 5 years. How does this impact sustainability and the environment when the appliances end up in landfills?
I'd be curious to know what manufacturer they are and what appliances they are.
So if Chris, if you want to put that into the question box, so I'll ask another question and we'll come back to that in a minute. Somebody had asked, can you recommend any salvage or reclamation yards in the Rochester area?
Yeah, there's actually a couple. There is a salvage company on South Avenue, and there is another one that's just recently moved up to Greece. The actual names is escaping me, but there was one on University, and that is the one that moved up to the Greece area. Both of those are going to have a really extensive array. Home Parts, I think, is the one on South Ave. Rehouse is in Greece, yes. That's the one that moved from University.
We're waiting just to see if Chris wants to post a clarification on the appliance piece.
You know, while we're waiting, and if that doesn't come back up, what I would suggest, again, this goes to that early part of the discussion when I was talking about reading the labels. If you really think about this entire process, the way that you buy your food, and you do the background research on the longevity. Now, certain appliances like a coffee maker, for example, might have a lower life expectancy, but your refrigeration systems, your ranges, those kinds of items in particular should have significantly longer lifespan and warranty. You can also purchase extended warranties, which will help in terms of any kinds of repairs that are going to extend the life. So that's another piece that you want to take a look at, the manufacturer warranties.
There's a question, is a copy of the presentation being mailed out at some point? In about a week or less, you'll receive an email with a link to the webinar so that you'll actually be able to revisit the webinar again. There's another question as well. How much on average does it cost to hire an interior designer? Let's say an average sized bathroom with toilet, sink, and shower.
It's going to depend on where you are in the country and the fees associated. So, for example, interior designers may have an hourly rate. So the hourly rate can range anywhere from $90 to $120 depending on who the interior designer is or what the scope of the project is. Some interior designers for something that's small will give you a package price and tell you it's going to be X number of dollars. So the way that we tend to value engineer our services is looking at either an hourly rate so that every time we're on the job with you, we're on the clock and there's a set of services that have already been predefined in the contract, or we're looking at the scope of work and complexity of the project in order to determine how many hours we anticipate this project taking us, and then that is contracted with the option to continue services above and beyond that contract.
And Chris responded, we've got about another minute left. The washer is LG, the stove is an LG, and the dishwasher is KitchenAid. They're saying that the computers break down after that period of time.
The manufacturer is saying. I'm surprised that the manufacturer would say that. My suggestion would be before you go with replacement to contact customer service for LG, and particularly KitchenAid. KitchenAid is part of the Whirlpool Corporation, and they tend to be very, very good with their consumer help. So I would suggest going that route because if there is some kind of defect, there would probably be some additional support for you.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for Q&A. Additional questions can be emailed to ritalum@rit.edu. or tweeted to @RIT_alumni with the hashtag #MeRITWebinars. and we will direct your questions to Mary. Note that all participants will receive an email from us in the next few days with a link to today's webinar recording. Many thanks to Mary for being our distinguished speaker today, and thank you to all our listeners for joining us for today's webinar. Our next webinar is scheduled for February 25th, where we'll present How to Attract Opportunities, a Guide for Life and Business, with alumna Emily Hart, a 2015 master's graduate in entrepreneurship and innovative venture. Look for your emailed invitation to arrive in your inbox shortly. Thank you again for joining us.